Have you ever considered that the greatest illusion of your life may not be money, success, religion, or even death? What if the deepest illusion is the one thing you have trusted every single day, the feeling that there is a separate you living inside your body, looking out at a world that exists apart from you? For most people this sounds absurd. After all, you have a name, you have memories. You have desires, fears, ambitions, and personal experiences. Surely that proves you are an independent individual moving through a universe that surrounds you. But Alan Watts suggested something radically different. He often challenged the most basic assumption of modern life, the belief that we are isolated beings trapped inside our skin. According to Watts, this feeling of separation is not reality, it is a kind of hypnosis. A powerful illusion we learn from childhood. And until that illusion is seen through, human beings remain trapped in anxiety, fear, loneliness, and endless striving. As Alan Watts famously said, you are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself. Pause for a moment and let that sink in. What if you are not a visitor in the universe? What if you are not an outsider trying to find your place in existence? What if the universe itself is looking through your eyes right now? This is where Zen Buddhism enters the conversation. Many people misunderstand Zen. They imagine Zen as a system for becoming calmer, wiser, more disciplined, or more spiritual. But Alan Watts repeatedly explained that Zen is not really about self-improvement. In fact, Zen questions the very existence of the self you are trying to improve. This sounds shocking, because nearly every aspect of society is built upon the assumption that you must become something more than you are. Become richer, become smarter, become more successful, become more respected, become more enlightened. Yet Zen asks a simple but devastating question: who exactly is trying to become better? When you search carefully for this permanent self, where is it? Can you find it? You can find thoughts, you can find emotions, you can find memories. You can find sensations, but can you actually locate a fixed and separate I behind them? Zen masters have explored this question for centuries. Again and again they discovered that what we call the ego is not a solid entity, it is a process, a pattern. A story continuously told by the mind. Alan Watts often compared it to a whirlpool in a river. A whirlpool appears to be a separate object. It seems distinct from the flowing water around it. Yet it is nothing other than the river itself moving in a particular way. Likewise, what we call a person is not separate from the universe, we are expressions of it. Temporary patterns emerging from a much larger reality. The problem begins when the whirlpool imagines it exists independently from the river. This is the root of human suffering. Because once you believe you are separate, fear naturally follows. You fear losing what you have, you fear rejection, you fear aging, you fear death, you fear not being enough. The ego survives by constantly defending itself against an imagined world outside. But according to Zen, the separation itself is the illusion. Alan Watts once said, "The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance." The universe is not a collection of separate objects, it is a continuous process, a cosmic dance. And every living thing participates in it. Think about your body. The air you breathe was once inside trees. The water you drink has traveled through clouds, rivers, oceans, animals, and countless generations of life. The atoms inside your body were forged in ancient stars billions of years ago. Where exactly does the universe end and you begin? The closer we look, the more difficult that question becomes. Zen encourages us to see reality directly instead of through concepts. And when this direct seeing happens, something extraordinary occurs. The burden of constantly trying to become someone begins to fall away. This does not mean passivity. It does not mean giving up on life. It means recognizing that your deepest nature is already complete. As Alan Watts said, muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Much of our psychological suffering comes from endless efforts to control ourselves. We constantly analyze, judge, compare, and criticize. We are at war with our own minds. But Zen points toward a different possibility. Instead of fighting reality, we can learn to trust it. Instead of endlessly chasing fulfillment, we can recognize that life itself is already the fulfillment we seek. This realization changes everything. Because if there is no isolated self struggling against the universe, then life is no longer a battle, it becomes participation. You stop seeing yourself as a lonely creature drifting through an indifferent cosmos. You begin to recognize that you belong here completely, not because you earned it, not because you achieved something, but because you have never been separate from existence in the first place. This brings us to perhaps the most profound insight Alan Watts ever shared. An insight that has the power to transform how we understand ourselves, death, and life itself. He said, "You are not a stranger in the universe." And even more famously, you are the universe experiencing itself. Think carefully about those words, not as a poetic metaphor, not as a philosophical idea, but as a possibility. The trees, the oceans, the stars, the galaxies, and every living being are expressions of the same unfolding reality. You are not standing outside that process, you are that process. Life is not something happening to you, life is happening as you. And perhaps this is the ultimate lesson of Zen. There is nothing you must become, nothing essential is missing. Nothing fundamental needs to be added. The separate self you spend so much energy protecting was never as solid as you imagined. Beneath all the stories, fears, ambitions, and identities lies something vast, timeless, and inseparable from the whole. The moment you see this, even briefly, the world begins to look different. The anxiety of separation loosens its grip. The struggle to prove yourself becomes less urgent. And for the first time, you may understand what Alan Watts was pointing toward all along. You are not a strange being living in the universe. You are the universe itself, awakening to its own mystery through the experience of being human.